So then I guess my biggest question for you is, do you think that all of this connective storytelling explaining how Palpatine returned in The Rise of Skywalker can actually save that storyline and make Rise of Skywalker better?
My first immediate thought is no. but, but that's because I don't love that movie.
Welcome back to This is the Wayseekers, a podcast for Star Wars fans by Star Wars fans. My name's Austin SWE. I'm here with the baddest batch out there, Scotty Holiday. Scotty, how you doing?
I love that intro, and I am feeling like a bad batch after that. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to get to these episodes and discuss. We've been waiting, but before we do, new Bad Batch discussions are releasing every Thursday at 8 a.m. Central Time during the entire duration of the show's release. So, to make sure you never miss out on an episode from us, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or your favorite audio platform so you never miss out. Scotty, what are we discussing today?
Well, if you didn't know, a little-known Star Wars animation show called The Bad Batch just released, and we're going to discuss the premiere episodes, Confined, Paths Unknown, and Shadow of Tantiss.
Yes. I'm super excited. And we've gotten to talk on the podcast in the past with our trailer reaction and kind of our predictions for 2024, what we are expecting from Bad Batch Season 3. And I honestly think our expectations were set pretty high just based off of what we saw from Season 2, Season 3.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, Scotty, just off the bat, do you think these 3 episodes have met your expectations so far or still waiting to get there?
I don't really know what exactly I expected. What I will say though is I loved the darker tone already, like
Yes.
from the jump, and something about that's already setting it up to where I know it's going to be an emotional story. I love a complex emotional story, so I'm excited just off of these first 3.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And honestly, for me, I've talked about in the past some of my expectations. Crosshair and Omega team up, we got that.
Yeah.
Crosshair redemption story, we got that. You know, I feel like for me, these 3 episodes already surpassed my expectations. And, for me, my favorite Star Wars is the ones that have me sitting here pumping my fists in the air, like, yeah, let's go. I know
Yeah.
you don't really act like that, but, me still got that masculine energy in me.
I do it mentally in my head. I'm like, yes, good for them, good for her.
Right. Well, that was me in season or episode 3.
Mhm.
That whole escape and everything, I just was at the edge of my seat, and I mean that literally. Like I was sitting on the edge of my seat, like yes, get out, let's go. Like there's
Yeah.
just so many moving pieces within these 3 episodes that even just these 3 episodes alone have so much payoff, have so much to celebrate, have so much to be sad over and cry over. And so
Yeah.
I'm really excited to get into this discussion starting with episode 1.
Me too. And I really feel like the fact that we've got multiple kind of storylines going on too is going to make it even better.
Yeah, 100%. Always going into these shows whenever they're like 2-episode premiere, 3-episode premiere, I'm like, "Ooh, why did they do that? Do they not
Mhm.
feel, confident enough in just releasing 1 episode?" But I think that after watching these 3 episodes, it makes so much sense because you get like the Crosshair and Omega stuff at the start and kind of, you know, the continuation of that cliffhanger from season
Mhm.
2 that we've all been waiting for a year now to know
Yeah.
what happens next. And so we got that. Then we also got to keep up with Wrecker and Hunter and how they're dealing with these losses and everything and
Mhm.
seeing how they're working to, try and find Omega, try and restructure from losing 3 members if you count
Yeah.
Echo, who's away
True.
with Rex. So overall, 3 great episodes, and I'm just like, I can't even imagine where the show's gonna go. But
Yeah. Let's get into it.
yeah. So from the start, episode 1, we're introduced to Omega, all her daily tasks. We're seeing her help. And one thing that I kind of forgot about going into season 3 is that
Mhm.
Omega's not technically a prisoner. Now, that just means she's not named as a prisoner. Obviously, the
Yeah.
way that she has to act is much more of a prisoner, but she's actually technically a worker here. Is that something that you knew? Like, we weren't going to see her in a cell the whole time going into this?
I don't know, but it was peculiar in watching it because things that stood out to me was the fact that unlike the other clones, they refer to her as her chosen name, Omega, not
Yeah.
her CT number, which automatically just kind of like ticked it off for me. I'm like, that's a little bit different. And I guess it was kind of weird because she's like, "Oh, you're Nalise's assistant," and I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, so she is still assisting." So she's like half prisoner, half assistant. She doesn't
Yeah.
seem happy either way, though, which I don't blame her because I would not be either.
Oh yeah. No, just the worst conditions for her. And compared to like people like Crosshair or the other actual prisoners, it's kind of crazy that her situation is seen as like the better of the two,
Yeah, yeah,
which is like fucked up.
and I think we learn, and I don't want to get too ahead, but I think we learn at one point from Hemlock, and I think it's episode 3, where he's like, maybe some of the freedom that she has, we need to take that away. So I'm like, oh, this is like
Yeah.
her with freedom. I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine like what what's worse or without any.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I say she's still a prisoner no matter
Yeah.
what.
Omega asks Emery at one point in the first episode, like how come I never saw you on Camino? And
Hmm.
Emery's like, oh well, like I wasn't on Camino. So that just immediately in my head, I'm like, so where the fuck were you? And all
Right.
these other like female doctors or scientists who also I feel like they're clones as well.
Hmm.
Because they all kind of look very similar, but we haven't really spoken to any others other than Emery.
Yeah.
But I'm curious as to what happened from pre Empire with them to post Empire. Were they a part
Yeah.
of some secret contingency, like to
Hmm.
be a part of the Empire? We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I think Emery's going to be one of the most interesting aspects of this upcoming season. Is she
Yeah.
loyal to the Empire? Does she have some sort of soft spot for clones? We see multiple times, like with Omega, it's like, yeah, she's not going to help them escape, but she'll get them back to where they go so that nobody ever knows that they even tried to escape.
Okay, when we first got the reveal at the end of season 2 where she's like, "Oh my god, I'm your sister."
Hmm.
I just thought that was "Oh, I'm your sister, you need to trust me," like just trying to gain her trust, but like the more I
Hmm.
see their relationship together, at least in this first episode, I almost do feel like she's trying to gain some kind of
Yeah.
kinship or like companionship with Omega, which yeah, it really plays onto what exactly is Emery's deal. Like, is she there
Hmm.
against her will? Is she just programmed to be here? She clearly has her own autonomy.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's not an inhibitor chip situation like with the actual clone troopers, but we
Hmm.
just don't know enough about her. Hopefully we learn some more.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, honestly, from how this season's going, I'm sure we're going to get a ton of reveals because in the first 5 minutes, we learn what this whole plan actually is. And I mean, we've been
Hmm.
able to theorize and such, but Nala Se reveals to Omega and therefore reveals to us that what they are trying to do is clone midichlorians, get
Hmm.
that M count to be the same as whoever the donor is. So they're clearly trying to clone stuff, clone Emperor Palpatine, as we
Yeah.
know, leading up to Rise of Skywalker.
I have a pet peeve about them using the phrase M count.
Uh-huh.
Because this goes back to the whole prequel erasure. Everyone hates the prequels. Everyone
Yeah.
hates midichlorians, so we're never going to call them midichlorians again. We're just going to start saying M count. Which,
Yep.
yes, it makes sense from like a scientific standpoint that they would come up with another thing. But I'm like, y'all really just are going to avoid the word
Yeah.
altogether. It's just M count. It was M count in Mando, which I was like, fine, this is years later in the timeline. But I'm like, really, we're calling it M count.
No, no, you're onto something there because it was the same for me when I was watching. I'm like, oh, there they go using M count. Is this just because they just want to avoid the word midichlorian, which I don't think anybody's complained about in 5 years. So what are they
Well,
still
because they've
avoiding it for?
I was gonna say, yeah, they've been avoiding it the whole time, so that's like, we're not even gonna bring it up, we're just gonna say M count, and
Yep.
people will just be like, "Oh, science thing, cool,
Right. Right.
whatever." Don't look it
Yeah.
up on Wikipedia if you wanna stay ignorant.
Exactly. Exactly. But you know, this whole thing about trying to clone midichlorians and then Nala Se saying we gotta get your blood samples out of here, throwing them away for 120 days straight, throwing away
Mhm.
120 samples of her blood to
Yeah.
avoid something that's going on. I know it's been theorized in the past that Omega is force sensitive, and obviously we get the answer within these 3 episodes. But I want to ask you, at what point did you start to realize, okay, they are gonna reveal that Omega is force sensitive? Was it in this episode, or was that kind of in episode 3?
No, it was episode 3 because I was still just
Mm,
like, "Oh, they just, like." I just assumed that they were doing blood samples for testing in general. Like, I thought, yeah, when they run her blood, it's gonna
mhm,
trip the system, it's gonna be like, "Oh, here's a good, person to experiment on," but I didn't think it necessarily had anything to do with, like, the M count.
right.
So and yeah, until the 3rd episode, it didn't even really, like, click on me because 'cause I've always kinda
See.
hated that theory. Uh,
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, with the rest of these episodes and probably towards the end here once we get to episode 3 on how we actually feel about that reveal. But
yeah.
for me, this is when I started to realize, "Oh, okay. They're doing it. This is what's happening." Because I mean, we know from, like, the Gunji episode in season 2 that the hints have always kind of been
Yeah,
there. But for me, I was like, "Well, if they explicitly reveal that this is the scientist's goal here on Mount Tantiss, then it has to be what's going on here because otherwise, why would Omega's blood samples matter in this scenario?" So I was like, "Oh shit, here we go." And now it just leads to more questions of like, how, who, like who is the donor that she has the same M count of, you know?
that is so true because Nalase knew, which is why she immediately was like, "Oh, they're taking your blood," and she literally puts it in a thing that, like, evaporates it, it destroys it
Yeah,
completely. I just wanna know too, like, nobody noticed they weren't logging Omega's sample getting taken and then, like,
right.
it just not getting input into the system, but that's besides the point. I guess this is what happens when you know you're gonna have 3 seasons of a show, so you can actually build up to storylines
Mhm.
clearly to where they make sense. Didn't
Yeah.
even think about the Gunji thing. So many people brought that up, and they're, like, communing with the trees or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a really interesting point. I wonder who that sample could have been from too. I wonder if it could be just like fucking Sifo Dyas or something, like
Oh
bring him
shit.
back into the story. Uh,
You have a point there that I didn't even think about.
I mean, who else
That's
could it be? Count
yeah.
Dooku?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't necessarily think it would be Palpatine. Well, maybe. I mean, Palpatine's who they're trying to clone, but it's like Omega is not no fucking Palpatine clone. She's still a Jango Fett clone.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, where does this get mixed in?
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, Sifo Dyas, that's my guess.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we'll hold on to that and see in the future. But one thing I want to point out here is that Nala Say, I think this might be some of the most interesting stuff we've seen with her in the Bad Batch. I mean, season 2, I just rewatched a lot of those episodes in season 2. She
Mhm.
explicitly tells Hemlock that this whole thing that Palpatine wants about cloning midichlorians is impossible. But clearly, she knew all along if Omega is force sensitive that it was possible. So is she gonna be like part of this rebellion here? The rebellion vibes we got going on? For me, I just never took the Kaminoans as being part of the rebellion. I always actually felt like I couldn't trust them at all. So it's interesting to kind of see her trying to stop Palpatine's plans here.
I mean, I imagine that's what happens. I mean, I would do the same if, I was in her position and she wiped out my livelihood,
Yeah,
possibly my family, my race.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, I'd probably want to do anything. And I don't even want to say it's like an anti-hero thing, but just like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And
yeah.
the Kaminoans kind of stuck to themselves anyway. I think it's fucking Dexter Jetster that points it out. He's like, "Oh, they're
Hmm.
cloners on Camino," and like,
Right.
so.
Yes.
But it was interesting seeing her almost be in. I mean, we know she cared for Omega, but like, she's literally trying to save this girl's life.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting, and just the way that they, like, kinda use Omega and Nala Se's care for Omega as leverage to kinda keep both of them around. It's, and Omega even exploits that in, this episode.
She does.
So after we see kind of Omega's day-to-day routine here on Mount Tantiss, we see her go and talk to Crosshair for presumably the first time, where Crosshair is actually conscious, but I don't really know because she's been there for like 21 days at this point.
So did you count as well? You counted the
Yeah,
tallies?
her little
Same. I
tallies.
have that in my
Yep.
notes.
Yes, indeed. And I think this is the first time that they actually get to talk. And Omega's like, "I want to get us out of here. I plan to escape." And Crosshair's like, "What? Like you want me to escape with you?" It's kind of like I wouldn't second guess leaving you behind. So I don't
Yeah.
know why you want to save me so much, even though I think that he's lying there. But what do you think about their dynamic here? Did you expect Crosshair to, be so nice to Omega and kind of accepting and understanding at this point, or do you expect him to be a little bit more dismissive?
I think it's kind of a similar situation with both of them that unfortunately, whether they want to work together or not, like
Hmm.
they have a connection from working together in the past. Because
Yeah.
if we think back to season one, wasn't it Crosshair who saved Omega in Camino?
Yeah.
Like when they were doing the bombardment and whatnot, they kind of had to
Hmm.
go on a mission together. I don't know. One
Yeah.
of them saved the other. I haven't watched season one in a very long time, but they had to work together. So they
Right.
built that relationship. And I think that the way they're acting in Mount Tantiss is because whether or not they want to be friends, like technically they're each other's only friend. So
Yeah.
if anybody's gonna help you, it's gonna be this person.
Yeah.
And something that I noticed, which I was kind of like, really, like they think they're being sneaky. They don't acknowledge each other in the hallway when they, I guess, walk past each other every day. And
Yeah.
at first, I thought it was because Omega didn't she didn't know how to act when she saw Crosshair. I assumed it was like the first time,
Hmm.
but I guess it's more so no one catches that they know each other or could be speaking, especially not trying to work on an escape plan together. But I'm also
Right.
like, y'all are both literally worked with the Bad Batch. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
but I guess it could also be tossed up to the fact that the Empire doesn't care about the clones. They
Hmm.
don't care to know anything about them. They don't treat them like people.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
it's Hemlock who points out and towards the end of season 2 that they are assets
Yeah.
owned by the Empire.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's just that, ignorance of, like, they do not care.
Yeah.
But it is smarter for them to, like, not be like, "Hey, girl," like, in the hallway when they walk past each other, like, "Oh,
Right.
hi, Crosshair. Have a great day." Like
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely makes sense, and I like what you're saying here about, like, how no matter what, they don't really have a choice. However, I do think that's kind of the case for more so Crosshair than Omega. Omega, I
Mhm,
think out of the compassion of her heart, she genuinely wants to save Crosshair, and I
for
think
sure.
that for Crosshair, it's not that he doesn't want to escape with Omega or be friends with Omega. It's that he literally does not feel like he deserves her compassion whatsoever. But I also think that that kind of goes back to kind of what Crosshair says at the end of season 1 about how he feels kind of betrayed by the Bad Batch and the Empire, where the
Mhm,
Bad Batch left him as far as he knows and was like, just screw Crosshair, whatever, we don't care about him or, what he's dealing with. And that's kind of how Crosshair feels. And then the Empire, obviously, they view him as an asset, like you said. So
mhm,
I really think that with Omega, this is the first time that he is feeling any type of compassion from anybody. And I think that that's really that really gets in his head of
yeah,
like
it breaks that wall he puts up because it's, like, so
exactly.
pure.
Exactly. And just seeing that wow, despite everything I did, despite everything I've done to fuck over Omega personally, the Bad Batch personally within the last
Mhm,
few years that he's been working against them, she still cares and still wants to help him and has that compassion for him. And I think that, like I said, I think that really breaks down that wall and is the whole reason that we see Crosshair eventually escape within these 3 episodes. So, you know me, I'm a sucker for that redemption story. Shout out Agent Kalish, shout out Kylo Ren. So, you know me, I was living for all of this.
Of course.
So once we get back to Omega's cell, she's going night night. We see that she made a Tuca doll out of the hay that she
Oh my
collected.
god. I know.
Oh my
I
gosh.
saw her putting that together, and I knew exactly what it was before they, like,
Uh-huh.
revealed it on screen. I was like, "Oh, this
Mhm.
poor," like, she's a child. It's almost like, the Clone Wars episode of the Ahsoka series where it's like it's kind of remembering that this person is literally a child,
Mhm.
and the environment that they've been put in, which sometimes, we forget about, but, like, she's
Mhm.
She's just a child.
Mm-hmm. And child labor. And it really
Yeah.
shows when she's walking around and she's like a third of everyone's height. And it's like, damn.
Yeah, no, the Tuca doll was cute.
But yeah, after that, we see her kind of go into the window, and then they have the transition into the 5 months later, or around 5 months. We don't really know.
Mhm.
I want to ask, how long did it take you to realize that there was a time jump, and what was the thing that told you there was a time jump?
The markings on the wall. That's
Mm,
that's what
yeah.
made me recognize it at first, because at first I wasn't sure, but then I was like, "Oh, there's a lot more, like, etchings into the wall of," and I tried to count them. I think I got to, I wanna say it was, like, 150 or
Mm-hmm.
so, which I could be totally wrong because we all know math's not my strong suit. Counting, not great. But that's kind of, I paused it and I tried to count. So that was kind of the first thing, and then, the hair, which I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
disappointed in the hair, I'm not
Really?
gonna lie, because I thought it was gonna be, like, a cute shortcut, and no, she's got the fucking ponytail in the back, and I'm like, if you
Mm,
just buzzed off the long part and, like, trimmed it up around her sides and just, like, had that top piece long, it's actually, like, really cute. Much
yeah.
better than any hair she's had in this entire show so far. And I'll take the stupid ponytail to the season 1 hair, and then the season 2, like, Lisa Rinna looking hair. It's
Right.
just, so I'm a little disappointed, but it's an improvement. I just wanna cut that little ponytail off, and then we'll be good.
Right.
What about
Yeah.
you, though?
I guess for me, the only thing I noticed, because I'm not the type of person to notice like aesthetic wise, like, oh, her haircut will look like this. That's more
Yeah,
your area.
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I just, to me it looked like she was trying to either embody Emery, or this was like just a, even if she wasn't trying to embody her, it was a choice behind the scenes to kind of have their hair be similar
Oh,
to show
for
that she's like
sure.
growing into Emery or whatever.
I didn't bring this up, but yeah, I initially thought it was like, "Ew, it's just like Emery's hair, whose hair I hate."
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess the Empire doesn't give too many options to, be looking fly for the
I
Empire,
mean,
but
I'm surprised they even gave her a hair tie, because she had to get
right.
that from somewhere. Hopefully, it's not some fucking hay from the kennel that she tied around her. Maybe Emery was, looking out for Omega in the few moments that she does, and she was like, "Here's a
Mhm.
hair tie," like, and then Omega don't know how to do her hair, and she lived
Right.
with a bunch of men. They clearly weren't doing her hair. So, maybe Emery was like, "Here, girl, I got you. I'll show you how to do this sick ponytail bullshit." So,
I don't know, I could imagine Hunter being one of those dads that, like, does the ponytail, takes the vacuum, and sucks up the hair so it makes a perfect ponytail.
I do have a complaint, though.
Alright.
Speaking of Hunter,
Uh-huh.
and I won't get too much into it, but Omega's hair grew. Hunter's hair has been the same length since season 1.
Who's cutting it? Who got the knife? Well, he does have that one knife, so maybe he's keeping up with it himself.
I was just like, "Really? Omega's hair grew, but nobody else's did? Whatever."
Yeah, yeah. One of those things. Time only passed for her. Um, but I think what's interesting at this point is that Omega's energy is just drained from
Oh,
being here for so long.
yeah.
Because, that first time she saw Crosshair, yeah, they didn't interact, but there was that moment of Omega being like, "It's Crosshair." And then like the
Mhm.
second time, well, it's not the second time, it's what, 150th time that they walk past each other at this point, she doesn't even look at him.
Mhm.
And she doesn't have that like childlike curiosity that she did
No,
before,
it's
or
just being sucked out of her.
yeah, yeah, and it was just incredibly difficult to see, and just the fact that like they kind of show too, like through the editing and such, they have literally the same shots of like the two troopers outside of her door, the people working in a circle, and then the blood samples. It's the same thing every single day, and it's just bullshit after bullshit for poor Omega
I
doing all this
know.
jobs, and she
It gets to
oh
the and it gets to the point where, like, she even beats Emery to the door.
yeah,
Like,
yep,
where she's already standing up and ready to go with for the typical good morning, and then
hmm,
she, eventually stops saying it back, which I'm like, "There you go, girl. Take those little victories.
yeah,
It ain't no
yeah.
good morning in this stupid
Mhm.
ass Mount Tantiss," but
Yeah, yeah. I know we already talked about Crosshair and Omega, but one thing I love is that you can kind of assume that it's part of her daily routine to go talk to Crosshair because we see
Yeah.
her like explaining, all about the hounds and such and whatnot. And it's like, oh, like seeing them kind of like you said, they're their only friends or the only
Yeah.
thing close to it.
It's like the only moment of solace that they get is that moment kind of at the end of the day together.
Exactly, exactly. And it's sad too because I feel like from Omega and Crosshair kind of calls this out. Part of the reason why she probably talks to Crosshair like this is because for her, it's kind of her only connection to the Bad Batch,
Mhm.
where you know it's like he's not them, and he points it out that he's not them. But for her, it's the closest thing she has to that. But I also think
Yeah.
Omega still sees him as part of the Bad Batch, part of that family, even though those 2 were
Mhm.
never really part of it at the same time.
But she looked up to the Bad Batch before she even, like, became a part of it.
You're
So,
right.
there's that, like, that idealism of, like, even though I mean, how many times is she like, "You're literally my brother,"
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he's like, "Leave me alone."
Right. Yeah. Poor poor Crosshair, just, feeling like he has nothing and nobody and that he doesn't deserve anything either. It's insanely sad, and I'm hoping that
Oh,
hoping that
you do have a soft spot for Crosshair. You were so ready for
Oh,
that redemption.
oh, absolutely. Because it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's fucked up and he's done some fucked up things and that shouldn't be excused, but it's what choice does any of these people have? I kind of want to talk about it with episode 2 as well. Just like the means of survival after this empire is put in place. These clones were conditioned and made for a war that no longer exists. And they're
Yeah.
starting to find out that it never mattered, anyways.
Yeah, it's rough. I feel really bad for them, especially in just, like, the few scenes where you, like, see blood samples getting drawn, and one of the
Hmm.
clones from the beginning looks rough.
Real
Like, he
rough.
kind of looks like Echo, but not
Hmm.
pale,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Echo don't look good." I
Hmm.
mean, I love him, so I'm accustomed to it, but, like, think of, like, Echo in the Clone Wars Season 7 when they first find him,
Yeah.
like, this poor clone looks so rough, and
So
I just
malnourished. Like,
yeah. I mean, yeah, they're just treating them as assets and
hmm,
specimens to experiment on. It's sad. I think
yeah.
that's the whole point of this episode too, is like, look how bad it's gotten.
Yeah,
Not that we
exactly.
didn't know, but like here we're actually going to show you, and
Hmm.
especially for this being a Clone Wars sequel series,
Hmm.
like growing up with these clones and then seeing how they're just literally tossed to the side.
Yeah, it is really rough, and I feel like they do such a good job here in this episode and all these episodes of really showing that, like
Hmm.
through different things, like the Tuca doll that Emery takes from
Hmm.
Omega. You know, it's like damn, like that in that moment, I'm like, yeah, fuck her. I'm not with Emery, but then she
Well,
surprises me
uh
when
huh.
she brings it back, never threw it away. And that's where I'm like, she's gonna be very, very interesting this season because
Hmm.
no matter what, there's a soft spot somewhere in there for Omega, for the clones.
I mean, like I said earlier, she is the one who tells Omega she's her sister.
Yeah,
And you don't really hear you never heard Crosshair calling his other clones like when he was out in the field his brothers.
right.
So there's something about Emery. We'll
Yeah,
just have to wait and see.
yeah.
She's on the poster, so she's clearly going to be a big part of this season.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And kind of the last little thread of this episode before we move on to episode 2 is everything
Hmm.
with the hounds, with Batcher, with Omega taking care of these hounds. And it's again showing the compassion that Omega has, giving her own food to Batcher, you know.
Aiming at Batcher, I'm pretty sure she named that hound.
Yeah, no, she did. She did. And cuz that they didn't cuz they were referring to her as whatever UK 1234, like it was like some number serial code, so they don't really it's funny cuz they kind of mirror each other. It
Hmm.
shows how these dogs are treated the same as the clones. They're both seen as expendable. If they're not, if they're out of health or whatever, just kill them or wait for them to die. We're not going to
Yeah.
use our resources to fix them because they're expendable.
I
And
mean,
it's
that
like,
literally
wow.
relates to the shuttle that goes down towards the beginning of the episode. Hemlock's
Yep.
just like, "Nope, not worth it.
Yep.
Shut off the comms. They're on their own." Like, Yeah, this
Yeah.
episode's very bleak, but I do
Yeah.
love those little moments, like, with Omega and Batcher, or, like we talked about already, Omega and Crosshair, like, so
Hmm.
it gives us that little glimmer of hope.
Yes. Yes. And I think her relationship with the hounds is very interesting because as we see and as they call out, Omega's care for Batcher at least, but I honestly think for all of the hounds, she ends up
Mhm.
domesticating the
Yeah.
hounds to the point where it's like her dog now. And they're like seeing Omega as like the loving owner that's gonna come home every day after work. Like
She's a dog mom.
yes, yes. And it's sad how because of that, they were just like gonna kill the hounds because if the hounds can't protect Mount Tantiss, then what's the point of having them? And
Yeah.
so that was just like you said, a very bleak episode, very sad. But ooh, Hemlock, I mean, he's done many things to piss me off, but him trying to gaslight Omega into thinking that she got Batcher killed, it's like
Yeah.
fuck you, Hemlock, because as Omega calls out, and I'm glad she's smart enough to know, that was their whole plan anyways. So whether or not she killed the hound or not by freeing her doesn't really matter. But also, we know that Batcher didn't die. So fuck you, Hemlock, for your little gaslighting tendencies here. And that's the moment where Omega kind of uses uses Nala Se's cooperation as leverage, being like, "I know you're not gonna hurt me," and Hemlock's like, "Well, then we'll hurt Crosshair, whatever his number is." He doesn't say
Yeah.
Crosshair, obviously. It's just
CT56729 or whatever.
oh, I thought for a second you knew the number. I was like, "Oh, really?"
Oh, no. Yeah, I just realized this tells you how bad I am. I just realized that they're all CT with numbers because CT stands for Clone Trooper. This just
Yeah.
this just clicked in my head either yesterday or today. So, no, I don't know nobody's fucking number.
Yeah, me either. Me either. But yeah, overall, episode one I think was a great start to season one or season three. It just had me so intrigued for what was next. Overall, what did you think of episode one?
I No, I really liked it, and it was funny because the whole time I'm like, "Okay, it's been a really long time. When are we gonna find out why it's been such a long time and
Yeah.
what literally Hunter and Wrecker are doing?" Because,
Hmm.
like, I'm enjoying the episode, but, I keep having it go off in my mind, like, "What's the Bad Batch doing? Why haven't they come yet? Why has it been so long?" And then we get episode 2, which is basically
Yeah.
all about them.
Yep.
So I
Exactly.
was happy we didn't have to wait, so finally, and I think we touched on this already, but, like, having the 3-episode arc where it's like,
Hmm.
imagine if we just got, episode 1 and episode 3 together, or just
Right.
episode 1 and episode 2. It's like they worked really great because not only did we finish the storyline
Hmm.
of, Omega and Crosshair, but we also got to catch up with Wrecker and Hunter, which I would have been kinda irritated if we didn't. So I'm glad we got all that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It makes total sense why these three episodes went together. And I also like the way that they're formatted as well, where it's not like realistically you could have just put episode 1 and then episode 3 as episode 2, but
Mhm.
I feel like it works so much better to spend that episode with Hunter and Wrecker and kind of their mission and how they're dealing with things and then go back to episode 3. I feel like it worked so
Yeah.
well.
That's why I said I love when we've got multiple storylines going on in the
Yes.
same, even if it's not in the same episode, but, like, being able to follow different characters, it makes everything feel more complex and makes the world
Mhm.
feel bigger for me, which I really like. And I know a
Yeah.
lot of people have complained about the Bad Batch and just Star Wars in general, like, "Oh, now we're gonna go see Harrison Dula on Ryloth,
Right.
and here's Ahsoka," and
Mhm.
people complain about the small universe thing, but
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
happy with what we've got so far.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting now is now that Bad Batch is into 3 seasons, it's actually able to reference its old storylines instead of referencing, like, clone storylines. Because we see
Yeah.
from the beginning here, we see the, Durans. We see Roland
Mhm.
Duran from season 1. And actually, I kinda convinced myself that I was just, picturing things, I was like, "Oh, I'd never seen these characters before," but in my mind, I'm like, "But he has the missing horn. Is that Roland from season 1?" Did you know immediately, or was that kind of after the fact that you realized?
Um, I can't remember if they said his name in the subtitles because
Mhm.
as a creator, I always watch with subtitles now so I don't miss anything. I'm pre-creator Scotty. I was like, I fucking hate subtitles.
Right.
But now I'm like used to them. I don't remember if it said his name, but it definitely said Durand, and I was like, oh, that's the guy from the first season. And can
Hmm.
I just say that somehow his face is more chiseled
Hmm.
than it was in season 1. I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, this man had some work done." He was like,
Right.
"I'm coming back for the 3rd season now. I got some money, son." Like, I was like, "Cheek
Yes.
implants, chin implant. Come on, girl. Like, good for
Yes.
you." And that was a really fun scene too because it was like a reference to the season 1 story arc, but it wasn't like a, "Oh, look, now we're gonna meet with Roland Durand and have a little
Right.
mission with him." It was just
Hmm.
more of a, "Remember this guy?"
Yeah.
Uh, and then it was they tied the Bad Batch into it, like, there was a
Yeah.
purpose, which I
Yeah.
like.
Because it's like if somebody was just tuning into season 3 for the first time, which I don't know why anybody would do that, but they don't have to know about Roland and kind of the history there. All they have to know is that Wrecker and Hunter were acting as some sort of mercenaries for the Durans, and then I
Mhm.
keep looking here because I keep forgetting their fucking name.
Oh, I remember
um, remember what?
their names.
Oh well, lucky you, because you know me, I don't remember. I don't remember
Subtitles,
shit. I
subtitles.
watch with the subtitles too, but I guess
Oh.
I guess I just for me it's one of those things where I hear you hear the name and it just like
You
I
know how I am, though. I'm
yeah,
I'm the lore bitch, so I'm like, "Ooh,
very
who is
particular.
that?"
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Lady Issa Durand and
Uh-huh.
Roland Durand.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as I was saying, the audience doesn't have to know who those people are or what that story is. All you have to know is that Wrecker and Hunter are acting as some sort of mercenaries in order to get information about Dr. Hemlock's location and where
Mhm.
this base is so they can get Omega back. And interestingly enough, they agree and then give them inaccurate, outdated information. And
They gave them the location of a base.
yeah.
They just didn't say what the status of the base would be.
Exactly, exactly. So that's where they head to the jungle planet, and we see all these vines and such, and then we see the base is covered in these vines, and it's like, oh shit. Now we as the audience know that that's not where Omega is, but the whole time I could not help but think about the anxiety that Wrecker and Hunter choose to ignore, but the anxiety of was Omega in that base? Is this the
Yeah.
base right here? But luckily, they don't have to wonder about what's going on for too long because they run into 2 clone cadets, which is very interesting because 1, they changed the design and got new actors for these
Yeah.
clones. So,
Yeah.
RIP Daniel Logan.
Well, surprise, surprise, Daniel Logan is credited voicing Mox, the leader.
Really?
Yeah,
You know, honestly, that makes sense because while I was listening, I was like, oh, I could tell that that person,
it's
Mox,
different.
is different and also trying more than the others to do an impersonation of Daniel Logan.
Yeah, and I literally thought to myself, "Oh, they're making Daniel Logan, or maybe Daniel Logan is doing this on purpose, trying to have more of the correct accent."
Yes.
Because, I just rewatched the Bounty episode where Ventress goes on a mission with Boba Fett and his crew, and
Mhm.
I think Daniel Logan was voicing, like teenage Boba Fett,
Mhm.
but the accent's horrible. It's really,
Yeah.
really bad. It does not sound right at all. He's like, "You'll get your cut," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "What the fuck
Yeah.
accent is this?" So maybe that's why people didn't pick up on it. I didn't know it was Daniel Logan either. I just looked in the credits, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's Daniel Logan, but actually trying to do the correct accent. At least the D. Bradley Baker, Tamara Morrison
Yeah.
impression accent.
100%. Yeah, yeah, that's what I noticed immediately. I was like, "Oh, like they're working to make these clones actually feel like clones." So,
Yeah.
I really like seeing them and, it's interesting seeing the dynamic between the Bad Batch, or at least Wrecker and Hunter, and Regs with, just
Mhm.
regular clones because we know they didn't get along at the start, but now we're seeing, like, clone cadets kind of take inspiration from the Bad Batch with Wrecker and Hunter, kind of talking about their loyalty. They're there to get Omega. And we know that these
Mhm.
poor clones got left behind when this whole vine incident happened. What are they called? Slither vines.
I don't like the Slither vines. I think they're
They're,
kinda dumb.
yeah, I mean, to me, to me, I kind of like it because it shows how much the Empire. I mean, we already know, but it kind of gives more into the fact that the Empire is fucked up. They went and made these artificial vines that took over the planet, and when that happened, they just left, fucked over the whole planet.
Yeah, no, and that's true, and I think that's the point, is just to say that, yeah, the Empire said, "Oh, this got out of control. We don't give a shit about this planet's ecosystem that we've now destroyed,
Yeah.
so we're just gonna dip."
Hmm.
Um, but I will say that I did love that, like, and when they get to the base, and at least for the first time, and I know lots of people have talked about this, but like reminds you of that shot of like Cassian on Canary looking over
Hmm.
like the devastation of the
Yeah.
mine on his home planet when he was a child. And it gave me very that, like, it was just all overgrown with the vines, but you could tell that they just cleared out this big space within this forest to put this
Hmm.
big ugly metal like man-made place.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
it was very interesting, but a good juxtaposition that I feel like we always need with the Empire to show how much
Hmm.
they don't give a shit about anything, and they literally think the entire galaxy is theirs because
Hmm.
it's an empire.
Yeah, yeah. But it makes you feel bad for the clones that got left behind by they say that the other clones left them behind, and that's sad. That's tragic. But it also makes me realize like this generation of clones, probably one of the last generations of clones,
Mhm.
they don't get to experience that loyalty of the clones that we see in the Clone Wars about how the clones really care
No.
for each other. They really care to have a personality and really care about individuality and respecting their given and chosen names rather than the numbers. They don't get to
Mhm.
experience that. And so that's just something I was kind of conscious about during that. I'm like, damn, like this generation of clones is like probably has it the worst of, they didn't even get
Well
to serve their purpose, you know?
and that's the thing, is because they didn't get to serve their purpose, we see them kinda struggling that they need to get to a point where they can serve their purpose. And I
Mhm.
think it might be Hunter later in the episode who's like, "No, we need to just find our way in the galaxy. We had to do the same, and you guys will do that as well. So that's why we're going to get you off of here."
Yeah.
But yeah, they're kind of stuck in that mentality. Not only the mentality, but the trauma of it all, like
Mhm.
being left behind on this planet. I know those slither vines that I feel a certain type of way about. I know there were traumatic experiences with that.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's just sad to think about because they, at the end of the day, they are just kids.
Yeah, yeah, because think about it too, they they may seem like they're teenagers, but mind you, that means that if they're 16 years old, that means that they're 8 years old, and so they
Yeah.
have 8 years of life experience, and now here they are on their own, and, it kinda
With
shows.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it kinda shows too that the only thing they can really think about is survival, because when Wrecker, Hunter, and is it Deke or I think it's Deke that goes with them, and Stack and Mock stay
The
left
nice
behind.
one. The
Yeah,
one
yeah.
that's not a piece of shit.
Yeah, the one that's inspired by the loyalty of Wrecker and Hunter. It's kinda
Mhm.
crazy to think about that the other 2, Mox and Stack, were gonna leave Deke behind, exactly what they were saying the other
I
clones did to them.
know.
Yeah,
I know. I thought the same thing. I was like, "Don't y'all take that fucking ship and
right.
be shitty. Don't do what was done to you to other people and
Mhm.
continue the cycle."
Exactly. But to be fair, from their perspective of just trying to survive, and also the fact that there's a 99% chance that those 3 aren't gonna be returning, and then once
Yeah.
they realize that they're not gonna return, their chance to take the ship and leave is gonna be gone. It's like, can you blame these kids for having that mindset? Not really,
That
but
yeah.
it's great that Wrecker and Hunter just going after Omega and showing this loyalty that they have is the kind of inspiration for all 3 clones in the end to do the same
Mhm.
thing and not leave Deke behind and Wrecker and Hunter behind. And I think that was a really cool little arc for those characters, because in the end
I
we see them
agree.
come with the ship and end up saving the day, throwing the bombs into the vines, and so it was another one of those heartfelt moments for me where I'm like, mini redemption, here we go, like,
Yeah. Oh, you ate that shit up.
yeah,
Yeah. I
was
love
living.
that for you.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love that you're getting it right out the gate.
Mhm.
One thing that I forget, even speaking about it a few seconds ago and while I was watching the episode, we, the audience, knew that Wrecker and Hunter were never going to leave those kids there. They were always
Right.
going to take them in the end.
Yeah.
But the kids did not know that,
Yeah.
because I'm sure they're weary of all clones, even though the Bad Batch are like, obviously we're different.
Yeah.
Um, but they still don't know that. They're not going to trust these people. And like I said, we know that they're not going to leave these kids there and just be like, bye, thanks for your help. But
Mhm.
they didn't know. So they didn't have that ease into it like we as the audience did.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the Slither Vines though a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not to shit on them more.
No,
But
go ahead.
once they get inside the base, how did you feel about how they're almost like insectoid, like creepy crawly little vine things? Because it was like unsettling for me, but I also thought they kind of looked a little silly.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't really pay attention to that. For me, where my mind kept going is thinking of the different types of animals or creatures, species that they use to actually create these. Because there's like
True.
parts where I'm like when they throw the bombs in, I'm like, did they clone a Sarlacc pit or like kind of like with the Zillow beast, how it's like
Yeah.
multiple creatures put together. It's like, is that did they just put different creatures from Star Wars in there? Is that like a Sarlacc pit? So I guess I wasn't really paying attention to it. Yeah, it did kind of look ridiculous. But to me, have you seen Stranger Things?
No, I didn't
No.
enjoy season 1 and stopped.
Well, there's like the whole upside down, and it kind of reminded me of things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
For me, I guess it feels camp, but I definitely understand why you think that they look so ridiculous.
And I don't hate them. I think it's a cool design. I just don't love the execution of it. I almost feel like making them more just viney and not having these little bodies worked better for me
Hmm.
than the weird creepy crawly ones. I'm glad you mentioned the pulling up or connecting different pieces of Star Wars creatures, because the big one at the end was actually giving me Dianoga.
Mm,
And specifically thinking of the one at the beginning of Fallen Order on Braca, and the one that the Bad Batch also faces in on
right.
Braca, it's giving Dianoga. So I'm like, is it a Slithervine or was it actually a Dianoga because it's sitting in a bunch of sludge and trash and shit? Or
Uh-huh.
like you said, were the Empire just taking pieces of different creatures and putting them
Mm,
together?
yeah.
So part of me was like, I hope they confirm whether it's a Slithervine or a Dianoga, or if it's a
Uh,
combination of the two, but I have a feeling that they're not going to. But
right.
me, the lore person's like, I need to know. Because in my head, I'm like, that's a fucking Dianoga. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it looks like. But
Yeah.
maybe it's just a big, massive Slithervine.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, to backtrack a little bit, one thing I did want to talk about here is Wrecker and Hunter
Hmm.
specifically and how they're dealing with these losses. We see Hunter doing Tech's job, and then we see him looking over at Tech's glasses and then Omega's
Oh my
Tuca
God, I
doll.
know.
And it's
Hmm.
like, oh, that felt so sad. But one thing that was really crazy to me was that Hunter, he's been through so much at this point that Wrecker is the voice of reasoning now,
Oh
where
my God, I know.
the dynamic like switched, where it's like before Wrecker was the one that's like, let's just get in and blow it up. And now it's like Hunter's being like, no, we can't wait for them. We're going to go and just the two of us, we're going to go attack this base. And it's like,
Yeah.
they're lucky that that wasn't Mount Tantiss that they were actually headed towards.
Yeah,
Because
for real.
but it's
It's
just kind of crazy to see that Wrecker is the one that's like, no, yeah, we can't be just going for it.
I think, well, obviously there's experience. There's the
Mhm,
anxiety of the fact that it's been so long and they don't know what has happened to Omega since she was taken. Like, for all they know, she could be dead, and I'm sure in the back of their mind
mhm,
that intrusive thought pops in, and that's probably the reason why Hunter is so like, we just need to go now. We can't wait any longer. And
mhm,
I like that you mentioned like Hunter looks at the goggles, he looks at the Tuca doll, and it's almost like the two of them are compensating for their missing members,
mhm.
to where it used to be a five-man job and now it's just two.
Yeah,
So they're trying to like compensate for those missing members, but also maybe it's just because of how long they work together that they're pulling pieces from each other,
Yeah.
because that's how they worked as a team. And now
Mhm.
they're not a big team anymore. It's just the two of them.
Mhm.
But I did
Yeah.
love Wrecker almost being like the soft one for once in some of those
Yeah.
moments when
Mhm.
Hunter was ready to go in guns ablazing, but then we get Wrecker and he's like, "Oh, get the creative explosives!" So
Yes.
like they're
He
still
still
in
got
there,
it
and
in him.
Hunter's still dad. He still takes
Yeah.
care of the kids. So
Yeah. 100%. And we see that in this episode. Like we already mentioned, that ending there with like the three clones talking to Hunter. I love that, they didn't outright say it, but we know that they're taking him to Pabu. And I'm like, oh, I'm
mhm.
so glad Pabu is still part of this story.
Yeah, because I literally thought when they said earlier in the episode they have somewhere for them to go, I was like, where? Where are they gonna
Right.
go? Because they look like clones.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. But now we know like there's gonna be clones out there in the world that or in the galaxy that just, exist, and hopefully in the future we'll get to see those characters again and see what they're up to besides being soldiers.
Yeah. More Cutlet Quain endings.
Yes. Yes. But before we move on to episode 3, is there anything else you wanted to mention with this episode?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked because, I looked at the credits and that's how I saw
Mhm.
Daniel Logan, but Lady Issa Durand, Roland Durand's mom, I recognized her voice, and at first I thought it was Patty LuPone, but I was like, there's no way Patty LuPone's going to be voicing Star Wars character in an animated show.
Right?
But by my surprise, it's Angelica Houston. And if you don't know who she is, you'll most likely remember her as Morticia Addams from the 90s Addams Family movies.
Oh,
Or,
really? Oh,
yeah,
shit! I
yes,
do. Oh, no way.
yeah. So Morticia Addams is voicing Lady Issa Durand. And for me, that was just so cool because, it's these big name actors coming in to do this animated Star Wars project. We got it in season 2. Oh, what is his name? The guy who voiced the big racer guy who was against Sid. I want to say it's Eddie
Uh,
something.
I
We
can't remember, but I know exactly who you're talking about, or like
and
how
then Wanda
these,
Sykes.
yeah,
Mhm.
with Wanda Sykes. So
It's
yeah,
cool. It feels validating.
they get some big names in here. I'm looking here too, and actually, Angelica also voiced someone in Star Wars Visions. So I guess
Ooh,
she's been
okay, girl.
attached to Star Wars
Good.
for a while.
I like that. I had no idea. I'm glad I brought
Yeah.
this up because I was like, "Oh, I guess we'll just move on." It's not that exciting, but it's exciting to me, but,
Uh-huh.
like, I didn't know if it'd be exciting to you.
Yeah, no, that's hella cool. I love that this show seems to have like more celebrity cameos than any of the other animated shows.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to episode 3, the last episode of this little 3-episode arc. We're back on Mount Tantiss. We start just with another average day for Omega doing the same shit, but we get a glimpse of that mysterious trooper. And I actually didn't realize that mysterious trooper, I had thought that the first time we saw him was in the trailer. But no, he's
Mhm.
in season 2.
I don't remember if we saw another clone assassin elsewhere in season 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you watched it more recently than I did. But at least in the latter half of the season, I don't remember seeing another one. But they're a brand
Yeah.
new trooper to, yeah, I guess it's just the Empire,
Mhm.
because I don't think they were a thing pre-Empire.
Yeah. At least not with that black armor. They weren't. But
No. And that lingering shot, it was like, pay attention.
yeah.
Pay attention. This guy's important. I like the idea that it's our good friend Tech reprogrammed. Um,
Mhm.
but I also think it could be a we're gonna make you think it's Tech, but it's not.
Right. I mean, I know we talked about that when we did our trailer reaction and discussion about like,
Mhm.
is that tech? But that's something that I'm like trying to put together now is like, can it even be tech? Like, if that trooper was seen in season 2, was he seen before
Oh,
Tech
so you think it's
died?
the same one?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is there still a possibility that that's Tech? Because when I theorized that that was Tech, I thought that the first time we saw that trooper was in the trailer. I completely forgot that we ever saw him in season 2.
Yeah, because he used the little suicide mouth thing that we first saw in Mando.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into the theory that I've had that they're gonna start doing some Phase 0, Phase 1 Dark Trooper stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so Could they have, reanimated that clone with technology?
Right.
Yeah, possibly. Or it could just be another clone assassin, but that's kind of been programmed for this really, you know, I keep saying the word mean. It's not mean, but like a really sinister just
Mm.
personality to where they're just like they're a killing thing. They don't
Yeah.
actually have a personality or autonomy over like who they are. They have a purpose. They don't have a personality,
Yeah.
which is still really sad.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what this guy's deal is, but he clearly is going to show up again.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gonna be a big part of whatever story's going on. But speaking of troopers, we see that there's a ton of troopers there stationed there all of a sudden, and Omega's like, "What's going on?" Well, we find out that good old Emperor Palpatine. Oh, that was a horrible impression. We find out good old Emperor Palpatine is coming to Mount Tantiss, and I think it's interesting because there's not many times outside of Return of the Jedi where we actually get to see Palpatine like in the flesh. No big holograms to make him look bigger or anything. This is like the first time really in a while that we're seeing him like in person
Showing
working
his
with this.
face.
Exactly. And so we know that whatever is going on is obviously something very important to Palpatine for him to be showing up in
Yeah.
person talking to Dr. Hemlock. For Dr. Hemlock to even have access to Palpatine in the
I
flesh is
know.
kind of
I
crazy.
know. I thought the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously we see that Palpatine really trusts Hemlock and
Mhm.
tells him, "We'll give you whatever you want because this right here is the key to the success of this empire and making sure there's a future." It's never been clearer that all of this is leading towards Rise of Skywalker, somehow Palpatine return. And I think
Mhm.
that we're not going to get away with talking about these episodes without mentioning that and how somehow Palpatine returned and kind of the lack of explanation in the Rise of Skywalker, how that's kind of dictating the future of Star Wars here because we've seen with the Mandalorian, they're dealing with cloning and they're dealing specifically with the cloning of Emperor Palpatine, and Grogu's a part of that. And then like in the
Mhm.
comics, we're seeing Exegol and how Vader was a part of this whole thing and where he fits into it. And then Kenobi,
Mhm.
we're seeing like Jedi being preserved after Order 66, your poor favorite character Terrace Anube.
Don't
And
remind me.
and then obviously the Bad Batch with everything going on
Mhm.
Mount Tantiss, and it's like I want to ask you how you feel about it because I know I have my thoughts on how this is all kind of affecting Star Wars storytelling, but I want to know what you think.
I I feel biased because I did not read any of the extended expanded universe, EU,
Right.
Legends. I didn't read any of that. So I'm just taking in what I'm given. I do
Hmm.
know some of the story elements from the expanded universe, and everybody like so many people want to complain about the whole Mount Tantiss,
Hmm.
Palpatine being a clone, this leading up to the rise of Skywalker. People want to complain about that and say like, "Oh, they're just trying to fix that movie." But at least what's going on right now at Mount Tantiss is pretty similar to what was going on in Legends.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if people complain about it and it's just making it relate more to the rise of Skywalker,
Hmm.
like they just they're just never gonna be happy. Like
Right.
these people are never gonna be satisfied. And for
Hmm.
me, I love that we got that Project Necromancer name drop in Mando season 3. So as I'm watching and I'm taking my notes, I literally wrote down Nala Se mentions an Imperial project, but is unable to say the name. Project
Mm.
Necromancer question mark. Look up the
Yeah.
project to clone Palpatine. And then
Yeah.
we get the name confirmed later in the episode. We go into
Hmm.
the vault finally, which I was pissed because they teased it in
Yeah.
episode 1, and I was like, "Really? We don't get to know what's in there?" But then when we're in there, we don't even get to see what's in the fucking tube, and I know it's gonna be bad because
Yeah.
even Palpatine name drops that they're abominations before he
Hmm.
leaves to Hemlock, and he's like, "Nobody can know about this because they're gonna think they're abominations,
Mm.
and they're gonna be terrified." And can we even say that it's Palpatine, or is this like Darth Sidious coming to Mount Tantiss?
Yeah.
Because Like, it's some sinister shit. And I
Yeah.
would be so scared if I was poor Nalase or one of the poor, like, clone doctors that had to be there.
Mhm.
But going back to your question, I'm cool with it. I
Mhm.
like I like connected storytelling that enriches the story that's already there.
Mhm.
People talk about the Marvelification of Star Wars, and I don't think this is necessarily that same thing. I think
Mhm.
this is more just enhancing what's already happened, and that's what I like. I
Mhm.
don't love necessarily the connectivity of, say, the Mandoverse to
Mhm.
kind of compare it, but I do like that the Bad Batch is now going to make other things that have already happened more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, and make more sense.
So then I guess my biggest question for you is, do you think that all of this connective storytelling explaining how Palpatine returned in The Rise of Skywalker can actually save that storyline and make Rise of Skywalker better?
My first immediate thought is no. But but that's because I don't love that movie. Will it
Yes.
make it better for me because I'll think, "Oh, here's this little thing that was planted back then?" Yes. Do I think The Bad Batch is gonna save the sequel trilogy? No.
No.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I'm
And
just gonna let it be like the black sheep of the trilogy. Uh,
yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you. Like, the thing is, I think it's kind of a happy accident. There's no saving Rise of Skywalker here. You're not gonna ever save the fact that they didn't explain how Palpatine returned in the movie. And all of
mhm,
this that they're doing is all just explaining that to make the sequels make sense. And I have mixed feelings about that, but I think that I'm really enjoying the corner that it's written them into in a lot of these shows. Because for me, like you said about connected storytelling, I too really like connected storytelling. And I feel like this is much more natural than what they're trying to
mhm.
do with like Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka and Mandalorian and such.
Ooh, now we sound like we hate the Mandoverse.
I don't know. I just think that it's really nice that Star Wars, at least right now, kind of has this overarching storyline that it's not like
Mhm,
it's taking over every show. And the shows that it does take over, like The Bad Batch, it makes sense because it's a show about clones and about cloning. So it's like it's not like it doesn't fit in there or that they're jamming it in there. So I feel like for me, I say it's a happy accident because yeah, I really hate Palpatine's return, but it's kind of really enriched this current era of Star Wars storytelling, if I'm just being honest. I don't know how
I
you feel.
mean, I feel so bad saying this, but, like, I'm really enjoying it in The Bad Batch, and I really hate it in The Rise of Skywalker, but I
Yeah.
think that's because it makes sense. We're getting explanations, even if we still have to infer, like, what's
Mhm.
happening. I still think it would have been just as good if they didn't even go the Palpatine clone route. If they still were giving the Bad Batch stories they're giving it to us now, I think I would still really enjoy it because it's
Mhm.
some sinister shit. And the way that they're
Yeah.
teasing it, but not necessarily showing everything,
Mhm.
it keeps us guessing and makes it exciting instead of just being like, somehow it happened.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. 100%. So yeah, I mean, we'll probably end up talking about this a lot over the next few
Yeah.
years until the whole thing kind of wraps up and we're kind of able to be like, oh, okay, so here's point A, point B, point C of how Palpatine returned. But for right now, I'm
It'll make
enjoying the
for,
journey.
yeah, and it'll make for a great video essay for you.
There we go. How Palpatine is structuring the future of Star Wars. But interestingly enough, the issue here isn't exactly that Palpatine is present on Mount Tantiss. The issue is that because of that, Nala Se isn't able to do the blood samples as she's been doing the last 150
Mm,
days. So
hmm.
she's not able to throw away Omega's blood sample.
She
And
is so stressed.
that she was stressing. You could see even with the camera work, whoever directed this
Hmm.
episode was doing their thing because somehow you can feel Nalase's anxiety through just the camera angle, the way they're kind of zooming in on that one blood sample. Like, That was real
Yeah,
good.
and the Kaminoans are like so emotionless, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
I could feel the anxiety even though there wasn't a huge change in her tone and her speaking,
Yeah.
'cause, she's just like, "Omega, you
Yeah.
need to remove the blood sample
Which,
and
like
escape
which,
today."
bitch, speak faster. I know that's, like, your whole thing is that you're, like, this soft-spoken, like but it's like, come on, if you're so worried that you gotta get this information out to Omega, speak up and speak louder and speak quicker. What are you
It
doing?
makes us it makes us pay attention to her though,
Yeah.
because we're like, "Okay, oh,
Yeah, what are
is
you
that it?"
saying?
So it makes us pay attention to her, I guess, so it gets the point across. But I was like, she's just pretending to push little buttons on the computer right
Uh-huh.
next to Omega. What does Hemlock think? She's just like, "Hey, Omega, miss you, girl. Like, I'm
Right.
so excited to take blood samples with you today." Like,
Right. Literally insane. But, it made for a really, really engaging episode because that whole thing makes it so Omega has to escape that day. There's no other choice. There's nothing else that can be done. Yeah, Omega's been trying to come up with this plan, and Crosshair's been telling her, stop worrying about other things. Worry about you escaping and getting out of here. Don't even worry about me. Worry about
mm,
you escaping and getting out of here. And it doesn't matter. There is no plan. They got to improvise. But Omega still goes to Crosshair because she's not
mhm.
leaving without him, no matter how dire it is. She's not leaving without Crosshair. And so me once again sitting there, oh, oh my god, like just
Well,
loving it.
what's funny about it too is Crosshair is like the Emperor's here. Like, this is the worst day to escape, and I'm like, I was thinking this is actually the best day to escape because everybody's preoccupied
Yeah.
and they all have to line up for him to
Yep.
walk onto the base. And I'm like, this is perfect because since the first episode, I was like, they're gonna go out the kennel tunnels. That's
Yeah.
how they're gonna get out.
Hmm.
And I wrote it in my notes. I would show y'all if I could. But I was like, that's how they're gonna get out.
Right.
And it's just so funny the way he was like, "This is the worst day ever," and I was just like, I mean, did you think that it was the worst day ever, or did you see it as an opportunity like me?
I didn't see it as an opportunity, but you kind of bring up a great point that, like, yeah, there wasn't really there wasn't really a better day to be doing that because they're distracted. So
Everybody's preoccupied, and Hemlock is like, so like, "Dad, please give me your approval to Palpatine." So he's
right.
also super all over the place mentally and only hyper focusing on being with Palpatine and
Hmm.
making sure he's showing off, like, "Here's my project, Dad. Are you proud of me? Please say you're proud of me,
Yeah.
and give me a promotion." But
Yeah. No, 100%. And this is why I feel like these 3 episodes really went so well together because
Mhm,
their whole plan of escape is going to the ship that crashed in the very first scene of episode 1, and
mhm,
it all ties together and makes you go, "Oh my god, thank god we saw all of this at once."
yeah,
Um, and so that was really interesting just seeing the, like, last ditch resort because they couldn't even go there and fly it out. They were just going there in hopes that the comms were working, and obviously they weren't
yeah,
working. And so for me, like, I'm like, "Damn, like, the stakes are high here." Like, yeah,
yeah.
I didn't think that Omega was gonna die in episode 3 or anything, but it's like the fear of them getting recaptured or this not being the moment they get to escape, it's really there. Like, I don't know, did you think that they were gonna be successful this time around?
That's a good question because I will say, like I said, I expected them to go out the kennels. Like,
Mhm.
in my mind, I was like, this is how they're gonna get out. But when Emery stops them
Yeah.
and she like gives them the opportunity to be like, I won't say anything about this, but don't make a stupid decision that's only gonna make it worse for you going forward.
Mhm.
I was like, oh shit, are they gonna leave and follow through? Or are they gonna be like, oh,
Right.
she caught us, so let's
Mhm.
just take the out that she's giving us to where
Right.
it'll be like our little secret. And then they're literally like, "No," and
Yep.
just go. And unfortunately, Emery sets off the alarm. They had
Yeah.
the ray shields that popped up in the kennel. I was worried that Crosshair was gonna get out and Omega was gonna be
Oh,
stuck.
right. That would have been interesting as fuck, but I
Talk
would've
about claustrophobia.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, don't let anybody get stuck in that tunnel. That'll be so scary."
Right.
Yeah, and I don't think Crosshair would have made it because he clearly had no plan because
Yeah.
he didn't know anything that was going on. And luckily, Omega was there. And even though he kept saying, like, you don't have a plan, and she's like, nope, just swinging it.
Yeah.
But without them working together, and then they get to use, what is it, Plan 72 or 77,
77, I think it is.
which I
Yeah.
couldn't really understand what that plan was. But I'm
Yeah.
glad it worked out. I
Right.
think it was like he distracts them while she steals their ship.
Yeah. I don't really know, but it is interesting that they have I keep forgetting that they have all these, like, different plans and that Omega's, like, with
Well,
them and
she
yeah.
memorized them and she says, "Oh, Tech made me memorize all of them," and Crosshair gives that, "Of course he did." Like, of course Tech made you. Does Crosshair even know that Tech is dead?
Oh, fuck. I'm sure
Because I don't.
Omega's told him at some point, but
That's
you don't hear him
true.
mention it. It would be kind of odd if she hadn't by this point. But it's like, I
Yeah.
would have liked to see that reaction for sure.
I don't know what the reaction would be if we'd really
Uh-huh.
get much of a reaction, but kind of more of a humanization of Crosshair since he's just kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like.
'Cause it's like one of those things where it's like, that had to affect him, kind of being like,
Mhm.
"Damn, like, I've spent the last year or 2 away from the Bad Batch, and those are years I'll never get back, and now Tech's gone, and so those moments, those final moments I had with Tech were my final moments with Tech."
Yeah.
Damn, not trying to make myself cry here. Um,
Do it.
but
Pun intended.
but what I love is, like I said, how everything in these episodes kind of ended up coming back. How earlier I
Mhm.
mentioned how I was like, fuck Hemlock for trying to gaslight Omega into thinking that she killed Batcher. Well, who comes in and saves Omega in the final moments in a last ditch effort is Batcher. And Batcher was
Mm.
only able to do that and only rescued Omega because she was domesticated and now had love for Omega. So fuck you, Dr. Hemlock. It worked out in the end. So
Although I was like, what are you gonna do with that hound on the ship?"
did the Hound come
What
onto the ship?
Yes! At the
Really?
end, Batcher jumped onto the ship, and Batcher is with them on the ship, and I'm like, "What are y'all gonna do with Batcher? You gonna ride
Whatever
Batcher
they want.
around?"
That's the dog.
I mean,
That's their pet.
I'm like, "Fuck Gonky. Now we got
Yeah.
Batcher. Fuck AZ." Uh, remember your old friend AZ, Omega? You're just replacing him over and over again, and
Yeah.
AZ clearly ain't with the Bad Batch, so I guess he stayed with bitch-ass Sid.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And this whole end of the episode is where I'm clapping, going crazy because then when it's, when Emery runs, Omega's blood sample comes back, oh, she got midichlorians.
Mhm. M.
That's
She has M's.
she has M count.
Ooh, girl, she got M count, okay? She's
Right.
serving M count.
Yes. But Emery comes rushing in and is like, "You can't shoot them down. You can't shoot them down." Omega has M count and, is a viable clone that we transferred Force to. You can't kill her. And Hemlock agrees, and I'm like, "Oh my god, like this really all came together. Every single piece fell into place by the end of it where it's like, yeah, we left off on a cliffhanger, but I'm satisfied and I'm willing to wait a
Yeah.
week."
Yeah, because, at the end of it all, we've gotten to an end point. Crosshair and Omega shoot off into hyperspace.
Yep.
We don't know where they're going, but it gets us excited for next week. Hemlock realizes, without Omega, I cannot make this project work, and if I do not make this project work, I don't know what's gonna happen to me.
Yeah. Yep.
And so now they know that they need her, which he was pissed.
Oh yeah.
Happy that he, like, found his answer, but, like, pissed because he's like, "That fucking little clone that I
Yeah.
only brought here so Nalase would work on this stuff." And then he also probably knew at that point Nalase knew the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I said, season 2, she tells him that Omega's existence basically is impossible. And so
Mhm.
it's like it kind of shows like, no, you just were hiding Palpatine's plan. We're trying to avoid Palpatine's plan. And God, just what a fantastic set of 3 episodes. Overall, I probably think that this was my most enjoyable time with the Bad Batch because I've talked about before how, season 1 was a little rocky for me, didn't Didn't love it.
Mhm.
Season 2, kind of the same thing to the point where I kind of fell off of the show before it got really good for season 2. And then I kind of watched those episodes now and went into season 3 and I'm like, fuck. They it makes me want to be less judgmental for shows that we know are going to be going on for a while because it's
Yeah.
like all those filler episodes, all those moments where it's like, what is this leading to? Does this matter? It's all coming together. And we've seen even from the trailer that it's just going to keep coming together more and more with, Cad Bane and Fennec Shand returning and whatnot. So for me, expectations already surpassed, and I genuinely think that this is going to be the best season of the Bad Batch. And if the story keeps going this way, I might even have to put this season above any season of Star Wars Rebels, which is my favorite.
Well, I mean, both of us have talked about it before when we did our year of or like our 2023 review. Bad
Right.
Batch season 2, at least for me, was pretty high on the list. And
Yeah.
like I liked it a lot better. I stuck through it though for when all the good came. That
Yeah.
I guess was right where you dropped off. But
Right.
I almost wonder if this season is so good because we're able to focus on the characters more because Tech's dead, Echo's
Hmm.
gone, no Sid,
Yeah.
no droid sidekick. It's
Hmm.
basically just, Hunter and Wrecker,
Yeah.
Omega and Crosshair. I guess you could say Hemlock and Emery,
Hmm.
but they've all kind of got their own little story points going on and they're all going to intertwine. But it gives us a chance to not have to, like, I don't know, focus on so many people in each scene, which
Right.
even then, fans were complaining that poor Tech and Echo had nothing to do all of season one. They
Right.
didn't know anything about them. And then, even Echo, he got wrote into the Bad Batch and then they kind of wrote him out again to go be
Right.
with Rex. But I'm excited because hopefully we'll be seeing Echo and Rex soon. I
Hmm.
wonder if X. I wonder if Rex is gonna have like a bigger presence in this season. Um,
Hmm.
so it's gonna be really interesting. But I agree. I'm biased because we know Ventress is coming. So
Oh, forgot. I forgot.
I haven't forgot. Unfortunately, I'm like I don't think I had any expectations for this show because I've just been so hyper focused on her return. So I'm
Uh-huh.
just like I'm loving this because I didn't go into it like we're gonna see this happen, and we're gonna see that happen, and I hope we
Yeah.
see this. Now, hopefully, she doesn't disappoint. that'll be
Yeah.
that that'll be that'll be rough. But I highly
Yeah.
doubt that with the care they've talked about that they've put into her return as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm just glad to see kind of people starting to realize, like, I've seen a lot of people talking about on Twitter today, like, "Oh, wow, the Bad Batch is good now?" Like, just, I'm sure it's not easy to write a Star Wars series and then come online after working on it for, what, 5 years, and seeing
Yeah,
everybody be like, "What is this baby show?" Like, you
I
know?
know. Ugh.
So now seeing, like, the praise, but it's also one of those things where it's like, and I'm guilty of it too, is like, just wait, just wait. Like, yeah, you obviously want the show to be good from the start,
Mhm.
but it's one of those things where now I think that if I go back and watch season 1 and 2, knowing how it all fits into place, I'm gonna be like, that works.
Well, this is what happens when you get to write and plan an entire show and get the amount of time that you
Yes.
wanted to tell your story.
Yes. 100%, 100%. Um, I know that these episodes it was kind of contained into an arc, and so there's not much we can predict about what's going to happen in the future. But do you have any kind of predictions for where you think these next few episodes are going to go?
Well, I think we're gonna go to Pabu,
Yeah.
to drop off the clone cadets.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when we go to Pabu, we'll see Fee. I would really like to get a moment into Fee's headspace of losing Tech because we never
Mm-hmm.
got to see that. And if we can't forget when they left, she was like, "You better come back,"
Right.
and he did not come back. So, I mean, granted, it's been time since
Mm-hmm.
Tech's loss, but I'd like to just kind of either get a moment with her with the goggles
Yeah.
or like I just want to see like how it affected her.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something important because of how much they built up their relationship in season 2.
Do you think that? Or where do you think it's going with Crosshair, Omega, and Wrecker and Hunter? When do you think that they're gonna actually come together again? Do you think they're gonna make us wait a while, maybe for halfway through the season, or do you think episode 4 they might just be like, "Fuck it, put them back together"?
So, audio listeners, while Austin was asking this question, I was smiling because my response, as I imagine most would guess, is that I want it to be an elongated thing and I don't want them to come back
Really?
together until the end. No, because I'm really enjoying the storytelling and in that build
Yeah.
up. If they're just together again,
Mhm.
like that'll be kind of like it fizzles out all that tension and the anxiety and uncertainty. I want to see Omega and Crosshair have to work together for a bit. Now that they've worked together to get off of Mount Tantiss, what are they going to do from there? What's their
Mhm.
dynamic going to be? Because they're going to be on the run and they've never been on the run before.
Yeah.
And with Hunter and Wrecker, they still haven't even found Mount Tantiss. They don't even know.
Wait, they're gonna go to Mount Tantiss and Omega's no longer there. That's where they're headed is to Mount Tantiss. Why did I just put this together? They're gonna go,
Mhm.
and what if they get captured? And now it's the opposite. Now Omega and Crosshair got to work together to get them out.
It's the
Oh
Ahsoka
fuck.
show all over again, and I don't know. Don't do that to us again. Don't make it Peridia.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little more interesting. I mean, like seeing Hemlock kind of interrogate Wrecker and Hunter would be interesting. I mean, we kind of saw that in season 2, but not enough, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah, well, and like they were already like beaten down at that point, so Hemlock was just like the final punch. Being like,
right.
here's your dead friend's goggles.
Yeah.
Give
Oh
us
yeah.
Omega.
Poor Wrecker had like his neck broken and all that.
Oh my god, he looked so ridiculous in that little neck brace, and then Hunter's got like bandages wrapped around his slutty little waist, and
Right, right. Those poor guys.
God, I love you, but I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want that at all.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it could make for a good story. I'm sure we'll go to Pabu and we'll
Mhm.
have to catch some fish, or there'll be another tsunami or
Oh lord.
something. They
But
got to help rebuild Lower Pabu. Who knows?
right. Yeah, I think this is something we've talked about in the past, and I've seen it a lot on social media, is the trailer in that first scene, there's like one shot where you can see Crosshairs on the ramp with the rest of the Bad Batch, but he's wearing
Well,
his old costume, and so many people speculated that it's a flashback. But I'm almost wondering if because it was so quick that they're back together, is it not a flashback and they're just together again?
I mean, do you not subscribe to the theory that it's someone wearing Crosshair's old armor?
I mean, maybe, but who?
Fee, maybe.
What? I don't know about all that.
I mean, I don't remember because I haven't looked into it. I haven't looked into what happened to his old like Clone Force 99 armor because he did get the new armor with the
Yeah.
Empire. So I don't remember what happened to his armor. But I would prefer the idea that it's somebody else in his armor.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be Fee. It can be one of
Yeah.
the little clone cadets. They grow
How
up
are they gonna fit
fast.
into that?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But we do know we see a crash ship, presumably the one that they took at some
Yeah.
point in the trailer, and it's not in the like Wayland jungle,
Mhm.
like the crashed one we see in episode 1 and 3. So
Yeah.
they're gonna crash somewhere.
I don't know,
Maybe
I'm
Naboo.
maybe.
It's on a grassy field. It looks very Windows XP background, so
Uh-huh.
that fits Naboo.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know, I guess my thought process is when you see that, your mind is like, "Well, they're not gonna put Crosshair in the trailer, so obviously that's not him." But what if they knew that that was gonna be people's thought process, and so that is actually him, but nobody's all upset that it was a spoiler or anything because everybody's first thought was, "Well, that's not him anyways."
I don't know. He definitely didn't leave Mount Tantus with any armor, so he would need some armor.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to know why they don't take the TK Trooper armor ever. What happened? Bring back stealing the armor of your enemies to blend in better in Star Wars. What happened to that?
Who knows? Who knows? But before we go, every week when we do this, we're gonna tell everyone our standout character for this episode.
Mm.
I think that mine's a little obvious. So do you want to go with yours first?
Yes, because I was thinking about it, and I didn't want to go with Omega,
Mm-hmm.
even though she was great. Um, then my mind was like, what about Nala Se?
I
But
mean,
you know who I've decided on?
who?
Emery,
Emery. Emery.
because she surprised me the most this episode. And that's why she was a standout for me, because she did a lot of things that I didn't expect,
Mm-hmm.
between, just being genuinely nice to Omega.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't have like a bond or anything, but like she seems like she genuinely just treats her like an actual person. She gives her back the Tuca doll that Omega's not supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
She gives Crosshair and Omega the opportunity to
Yeah.
just come back, and she won't say anything. And just in general, she surprised me. I know a lot of people are like,
Yeah.
"Fuck that bitch, I hate her." But I was like, she's doing things that are making me question, like Omega hints at to Crosshair, like, she's a clone too. She might be on
Right.
our side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. She's just she's kind of in a gray area right now, which really intrigues me because, like I said,
Oh,
that little redemption.
I
So
love I love the Greys.
yeah. Now, one thing I'm worried about is that because it seems like a big theme here is redemption. They better not bring Sid back and try to give her a little redemption. Because I don't know about that one.
Nah, no, she
Uh,
can just do her own thing.
yeah, yeah. For me, my standout character is Crosshair. I
Really?
I just think that, it's just really nice to see kind of we saw this journey with like Hunter and Wrecker and
Mhm.
Echo of learning to love Omega, learning to be her parent, and we never saw any of these moments from Crosshair except there's that little glimpse in season 2 when he's frantically like they're coming for Omega trying to reach out to the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
So I'm just loving seeing it all come together, all come to fruition. Season 2 really teased it a lot, and then they kind of left Crosshair out of, there really was not much Crosshair in season 2, if we're being honest, even though his moments were great.
Yeah. Every time he was there was amazing, but
Yeah, yeah. And so now just seeing it all come together, beautiful. Chef's kiss. And God, am I so excited for next week. I've never been so excited for Bad Batch. So hopefully I'm be pumping my fists in the air again next week.
I'm just excited to have another active Star Wars show that's going to take us
Yes.
until May.
I know. Something that's not 8 episodes long.
Oh my god, yeah.
But why don't you send us out of here?
Well, to keep up with all of our Bad Batch content going forward, make sure you follow Wayseekers Pod on social media or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and may the Force be with you always.
Bye.